Welcome to the mess that is my living room at the moment, as I am packing up everything to get ready to move out of this apartment and put all the stuff into my boyfriend's house to be ready to move out to Denver in a month and a half, a month. I have been going through my old books that I had in this bookshelf and deciding which I really want to keep and which I would be fine with getting rid of. And I've come to the conclusion that 2 big Trader Joe's bags full of books are going to go. So this is a video of me unhauling all of these books. I'm going to be quick about describing them and my reasons for getting rid of them, but know that the majority of these are books that I bought that were like less than $3 and I have no real personal attachment to them and it does not hurt me to get rid of them. I have a nice box of things that I am keeping that I am very attached to and or are books that I still need to get to eventually. So here we go. Here's bag 1, here's bag 2. A lot of these books are books that I got for school and I graduated 2 years ago, so these are books that I've kept around thinking that I am going to go back to them or that they were really important to me and I want to keep them, but some of these I think it's time to let them go. So number 1 is Pop Dreams, and this is a book about music, movies, and the media in the 1960s, and I read this for a baby boomer class that I had during college, and I don't think I ever got all the way through this book, but I did use it for papers that I had to write. The next book is one I just recently got, and I mistakenly didn't really read the cover. It is Little Women, but it is the abridged version, which is more for kids. I kind of want to read the whole thing when I get to read it, so I think this needs to go, and this is one that I picked up for like 25 cents. The next one is another one I read for school, and it's Contentious Politics. It's really theoretical and tedious, but it was one that I had during a class called the Arab Spring, hopefully my sophomore year of college in 2012. It was really fascinating, that class in general, and we used this a lot to tie into the arguments that we were making in class. It was literally learning about the Arab Spring and the seeds of the Arab Spring historically as the Arab Spring was happening. More books from school. This one is What's the Matter with Kansas by Thomas Frank. This one, I think my whole class and my professor, we came to the conclusion that we didn't really agree with this argument. It's too simple. I'm not sad to see this one go. I have Barack Obama's Dreams from My Father. I really do still want to read this, but this version is a little bit dingy. It feels like it's had some water damage, and I think that I can pick this up on ebook or pick it up from the library and have a great experience. So that's why I'm getting rid of it. The next book I've had forever, and it's called A Certain Slant of Light. I believe this is a YA, might be ghost or paranormal, something of that sort. This was one I used to read YA very heavily when I was a teenager. I haven't gotten rid of this book because I always think it might be interesting, and I think it's time for me to realize it's been like 8 years since I read YA extensively, and it's time to get rid of this book. I know somebody out there would like it better than me probably. Another book from college, and this is Memoirs of an Ex-Prom Queen. This one is a memoir and it focuses on a girl growing up in the 1960s, I believe. It was for one of my women's history classes that I took. I remember liking it, but it doesn't have very good ratings on Goodreads, so that's a little surprising to me. I don't even know if I read the whole thing, to be honest, so I'm gonna get rid of it. The next book I got at a Goodwill a long time ago, and again, it kind of goes in the same strand of I can pick it up from the library whenever I want, or I can pick it up on ebook, and I don't really need to own a copy myself, so I'm getting rid of The Other Boleyn Girl. The next book also is kind of water damaged, and I can pick it up at the library, and this is Colored People by my hero historian Henry Louis Gates Jr. The next book is also from school, and that is Long Time Gone, 60s America Then and Now. This is also part of the same women's history class as Memoirs of an Ex-Prom Queen, and I just feel like this is way too academic for me to get into the mood to read now, so I'm getting rid of it. The next few books are a series that I picked up on a whim, and I read like half of the first book and just gave up on it. Realized this is probably not for me. I just really liked the copies and they were brand new, so I picked them all up. And that is the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. Now I'm just gonna go give them back and they can sell them again for another library book sale, like the one where I picked up these 5 books. The next book is another YA book that I've had for forever, and it's time to say goodbye to it. That is Chasing Windmills. I have not read this at all. I think it's a gritty one, and I think it's like a love at first sight kind of story, modern day rendering of West Side Story. So I think it's time to give it up and have somebody else pick it up. The next book was also for class. This was for a Wikipedia knowledge management class that I had last semester. That's the Wikipedia Revolution. This class was really fascinating, and I took a lot of notes inside of this book, but I don't need this book anymore, and this copy is not very pretty. It's an old library copy that's been used and passed around. The next book I read a few pages of and realized I was not going to really finish it. And it's sad because it's a beautiful book and I love the whole point of it, but I don't think it's for me. And that's The President's Club. I think this would be great for me to watch like documentary style, but I don't think I have like the capacity in me to read a 600-page book about the relationships between the presidents of the United States. The next book I got super cheap, and it's brand new, and it's an author that I do want to read in the future, and that is Thunderstruck by Erik Larson. I think this looks into a sinking of a ship in London in 1902. I've just heard really good things about Erik Larson, and he's the author of The Devil in the White City, which I do want to read one day. The next book is one I picked up at a library book sale for cheap. And I do want to read this author, much like Erik Larson, but I just feel like I don't need to carry around this copy of this book, and I can just pick it up whenever I go to the library. So that is Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. I really want to read The Nightingale by her. I know this one is a story about friendship and girlfriendships, so that is intriguing to me, but I just don't want to keep this book. The next few books are all Outlander books that I got because they were all dropped off at our free little library where I used to work for AmeriCorps last year. I picked them up because I was devouring the first book at that time, but I haven't really gotten to the second book, and I don't even know if I care that much about the story to like continue on, but here they all are, so it's time for me to get rid of them. They are heavy, they are ugly, they are old, they are torn, and they're these mass paperback books, which are not that great for these Outlander books. The next two are things that I still don't know if I'm going to read, but I do own the hardcover copy of the first book, so we'll see if one day I'll read it. And that is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and I also have The Girl Who Played with Fire. I've gotten both of these, this one at Goodwill I believe, and this one at one of the Friends of the Library book sales recently. But why do I have these two books and I just keep them around for years and years and I haven't read them, and am I ever going to read them? So goodbye. Alright, the next four books are all from school. The first one is from a antebellum class that I had, so like from the Revolutionary War up to the Civil War, stopping before the Civil War. One of those is A Glorious Defeat, Mexico and its War with the United States, which focuses on the war between Mexico and the US from 1846 to 1848. I think I read some of this during class for papers and tests that I had to do, and I do have a few other books from this class that I am keeping, but this one is one that I am giving up. The next two are also from that Baby Boom America class that I mentioned earlier. The first one is In the New World, Growing Up with America from the 60s to the 80s, and this is by Lawrence Wright. He's a really great author, I have to admit. I read his book on Scientology. He has another one that's has won the Pulitzer Prize called The Looming Tower, so he's an accomplished writer, but I think this biography / memoir from him, I haven't gotten to it. I don't think I'm going to get to it, so again, goodbye. The next one is a history of automobile culture, and it's called A Nation on Wheels, again from my Baby Boom America class, because that's when cars started being used so much more commonly, and that led to a lot of changes in the way that people interact and the independence that younger people felt. That's what this book is about. I do remember reading parts of it, and we talked a lot about it during class, but not a history that I am particularly fond or interested in, so I am done with this book. The other book I have is Sex in the Heartland by Beth Bailey. I had this from one of my women's history classes that I've taken. This one is another one that's very academic, kind of like Long Time Gone, which I also mentioned, focuses on Kansas and their kind of sexual revolution, and kind of argues that it happened everywhere, not just in the cities. It happened in very rural conservative areas as well. That's a very interesting premise. The only bad thing about this is that it's very academically written, and I tried to read this for a readathon at one point, and I got 50 pages in and just like gave up because it was very dry. That's a pet peeve of mine, when you can't write history in an engaging, interesting way. Every good history writer should know that they should try to make their work as accessible as possible, and this book is not that. And books are falling! The next 3 books are all from an author that was beloved by me during my teenage years. That's E. Lockhart. So I have the first 2 books in the Ruby Oliver series, which were my jam when I was, what, like 14 or 13? The only other thing that I have not said goodbye to from these years is this Lullaby by Sarah Dessen. But it's time to say goodbye to the Ruby Oliver series, which I never finished because she kept putting out more books later on. And the other book is Fly on the Wall, which is also a really great book by E. Lockhart that I enjoyed when I was younger, but it's time to get rid of them. And the last 2 books are history books that I found. I think it was like a box outside of a professor's office, and it's been probably 3 or 4 years and I have not read these books, so I think they might be enjoyed by other people. One is called Racial Formation in the United States, and it focuses on ideas on race from the 60s to the 90s and how that has evolved. And then the other one is called Ethnic Identity, and its little subline is the transformation of white America. So it kind of goes through how different ethnicities, white ethnicities, have been othered over time. And you can see on the top here there's lots of stuff about Irish, and Italian and Greek and Polish and German. These are all identities that have become white America over time, but that at one point or another in our history were othered and vilified in some form. That is it for my huge unhaul. I hope this video wasn't too long. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I shall see you in my next one. Bye bye.